Good afternoon, internets. I know all of the internets are watching right now, all three of them. That was my last count of how many internets there were. I believe there was the WW and then the W. Those are a total of three. So my math is correct. And I have been learning a lot of math lately during our quarantine. I hope you have as well. Math is important. But you know what else is important? Theater. And that's kind of why we're here. We're here to talk about performance and theater and all things related to audiences being in front of people who are theatrical in nature. So, it is Thursday. Yesterday I said it was Thursday, but in fact, I'm right today. It is Thursday, June 17th. The year again is 2020. And we can see clearly that we are trying to keep the light on. You know, I could come up with a billion taglines for what I'm doing, but the main purpose of this is to let people know that we are keeping the light on, that ghost light in the theater, until we can open up all the lights again and open our doors and let people come and sit and enjoy live theater, because there's nothing like it. And saying that, I have someone here who has done live theater for a good portion of their life, and I'm here to talk to them about it. And it's someone who I have enjoyed being on stage with, as well as being directed by at the Savannah Repertory Theatre. And it is, of course, if you haven't read what this is about, it's Sandra Karas. How are you, Sandra? Let's bring you on.
Chris, I'm fine. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, well, you know, I wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm happy to be here. And yes, I'm sheltering as well. So you're in my living room, but it's nice to talk to somebody in Savannah. I miss the city.
It is. It's beautiful right now today. It's nice, and there's not too many clouds in the sky. I think we're still in the 70s today, which was wonderful. And how is it up there right now?
It's nice. It's about the same. I think we're finally turning the corner on summer.
Oh, that's good.
You know, we've had some pretty hot days here and there, but for the most part, spring was kind of a little on the coolish side. And I know that now everybody wants to go back to the beach, you know, and head to the shores and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we've got to be very, very, very careful about how we do all that.
Exactly.
Because,
yeah.
You know, New York City is one of the last places that's going to pull out of all of the quarantining and the sheltering. And we have to, you know, our governor, you know, kind of yells at us, you know, don't make me come down there. No,
yeah.
I did. But, you know, it's important for all of us to understand that if we don't do this right, you know, we could have really dire consequences. So we're hoping that, you know, little by little, slowly, we are venturing back out. We're seeing our doctors again, and you know, for non-essential stuff, you know, getting back into offices. Some bars and restaurants are opening up very slowly and in very limited ways, but it's all good. So, you know, we're just happy to see summer come and life kind of be restored with an idea that there's renewal around the corner. And that's the important thing. And, you know, of course, as you say, the theater is no different. Those are some of the last places that really can open safely. Concert venues, theaters, you know, big, huge gatherings of any kind are going to have to really be very careful about what's happening, because it's not just about, especially in the live theater, it's not just about the audiences, it's about the performers, the stagehands, the pit musicians, the crew, the wardrobe masters and mistresses, the props people. It's all there in big numbers, and most people don't realize what a cohort that is when they sit in the audience and they watch some people on stage. Even if it is a big musical, there's still a whole lot of people back there, and a whole lot of people who've had to work very, very hard. Mm-hmm. And if there is something that's musical going on, you know, we have to be very thoughtful about how we're going to get musicians back together to work together, and how can actors work together on stage within a few feet of each other without masks on. So all these things are going to be considered, and And that's part of the reason that our union is looking out for us so diligently. We're working with an epidemiologist, and we're hoping that as numbers look better and better, that we're going to have some idea as to how and where and when we will be able to open venues again for the public to come and see us in live theater. And I referred to the organization, of course, it's Actors Equity Association,
Right.
the Union of Professional Actors and Stage Managers. And it's, it's really, well, it's not only the gold standard for professional performing artists who work in live theater, but it is for those of us who have been members for many, many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
I was a very young actor when I got my equity card. It is, the highest standards of safe and sanitary conditions, of collectively bargained wages and working conditions that protect all of the members, the actors and the stage managers alike. And of course, theater in all its venues have multiple unions working, stagehands, musicians, wardrobe, designers, directors. It's quite a collective and collaborative process, as the theater has always been.
Yeah. So you mentioned the fact that it's going to take time for us to get back in the theater. And when we had talked about a week ago, we were discussing some experiments that were going on early on to try and get theater back up and running. And to that very point, it's putting that many people in one space and not knowing who may be infected and who may not be infected. And from day to day, I think there was a theater out west was talking about bringing the cast and the crew in for 2 weeks before they even started rehearsal.
Yeah, there was some talk about actors getting job offers with the idea that they could somehow protect everyone from COVID in some way by getting people in early, by getting people on public transportation, air, rail, bus, whatever it was. And this was all going to be protected. Mm-hmm. And of course, we scratch our heads and say, who's guaranteeing that one?
Yeah.
And nobody is. So, we really do have to work with our epidemiologist. The union has hired an epidemiologist to work with us and analyze the patterns of viral spread, all the CDC recommendations, there are various state and local layers of regulations that I'm sure, I know that Savannah has that might even be different from Atlanta. So we're really looking around the country at this, and we rely on this individual working with our executives and with government guidelines to make sure that when we can go back to work, we do it safely, not just for audience members, but of course for the performers and all of the people who are involved in putting a production together. And I don't know when that's going to be. We're all thinking that it's going to be probably early next year before we really know more about what we can do. There were some optimistic projections, even by Broadway, at first to maybe sometime this summer and then maybe sometime this fall. And now they're looking at really 2021 as mm-hmm. well. And that could keep shifting. We don't know. But in the interim, companies like Savannah Rep, in working with the union and in working with health guidelines and professional guidelines, are going to be, we hope, and I know Savannah Rep is doing this, using that time really wisely to rebuild, reorganize, look at structures, look at how we are funded, what kinds of projects we can do, how ambitious they can be. And I'm excited to say that this period right now and through the fall is going to be a very exciting time for Savannah Rep to develop. and to rebuild. In fact, if I may, I'd like to plug the campaign that we've got going because
All right.
it's really exciting. I'm sure you've heard about it. The Ghostlight campaign has begun in earnest. Savannah Repertory Theatre has sent out some feelers, some emails, some requests, solicitations to help keep the theater afloat, help us defray our expenses. And we're calling it the Ghostlight campaign because when theaters traditionally go dark, even if it's just overnight, the stagehand brings out at the end of the night, after the stage has been swept and everybody has gone home, brings out a single standing light that is illuminated for the night to keep the theater safe, keep it lit. It's a literal and metaphorical symbol of protection. It has some supernatural qualities associated with it. If you listen to all the great stories over the many centuries that people have been telling famous ghost stories about the theater. And so, Savannah Rep, like other theaters, will promise to keep its ghost light shining until we can get all of our lights back on. And so we have that campaign going for those of you who might have heard about it. We also have a subset of that because, as I said, we're doing lots of good work in order to get ready to open the doors again. And one of those is to install a walkway of pavers that are going to be offered to our patrons, our donors, our supporters. And we're calling that campaign Pave the Way. Buy an engraved stone and help us install that so that we can connect our handicap parking lot with our front door. So it's another one of those capital improvements that we've been working on for a couple of years now, and we're really ready to try and finalize that over the summer. That campaign ends September 1st. So if you hear about Pave the Way, you'll know that campaign will close down September 1st so that we can get really started on that. The Ghostlight campaign is going to go on indefinitely or until we can go into our rehearsals and open our doors again for the public. And so I want to plug those campaigns because, like all other nonprofit charitable organizations, Savannah Rep is no different. We need some help. We need to have our best friends and our patrons and our supporters be thinking if they have a couple of extra dollars, this is the time to support the arts organizations that mean the most to Savannah. And Savannah has, a remarkable number. I mean, it's not too abundant because you can't have too many arts organizations in any city, but
Right.
But it's such a culturally rich and diverse city that we know that there are a lot of people who do support the efforts, not just of theater artists, but of all artists, museums and cultural institutions everywhere. And so we are also looking during these next several months for further outreach and engagement with the city so that when we do reopen, we're going to be ever more entrenched in Savannah's cultural life.
Nice. Well, I did.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I posted the link to the Pave the Way right there.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So,
it's SavannahRep.org, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you've got on there. Good.
/ Pave the Way. I also put it in the chat for anybody who
Right.
can't. So it's clickable in the chat.
One more tiny little plug. If you're part of the Ghostlight campaign anyway, and you would like to make a contribution, if you're inclined to make a contribution of $100 or more, Savannah Rep will credit that toward your purchase of one of the engraved pavers.
Nice.
So you can sort of kill two birds with one stone, as it were. Ha ha,
Yeah.
no pun intended. Or maybe a few stones if you're so inclined. Woo! Yeah, so we're excited about that as well. I'm trying to figure out what I want on my stone. You can have them engraved. 2 lines for a small paver, up to 3 lines for a medium-sized paver, and up to 4 lines for the big pavers. So yeah, check it out online. There's lots of good information there on the website and about both of these campaigns. And I
believe there's even a rendering of what the stone pathway could look like.
Yes. Yep. We have that. Eric Bishop did that. He put it together and said, this is what we believe it's going to look like, or a reasonable facsimile of what it should look like when it's finished. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Yeah. And it's going to make access to the door a lot easier. We have a handicap accessible ramp, but the walkway is a little bit truncated before you get to it. So that's going to be completely replaced with these really wonderful pavers. So it's going to make the accessibility, not only are we paving the way for people who need a little extra help in accessing our front door, but for us to make our way into the future and open our doors again. So that's another symbolic, piece.
Just wanted to show people what that looked like. Yeah. There you go.
There it is. Great. Yep.
And
that's our front. Yeah.
Now we're back. There we go.
Now we're back.
So you mentioned the handicap accessible ramp that was built. That was built during right before our run of Driving Miss Daisy.
Yes, it was. It was finished just before then. Right. And we had all kinds of volunteers. Eric Bishop, the technical director of the theater, was in charge of, the design and the build of that. And, we all scratched our heads and said, yeah, well, labor is pretty expensive, but boy, thank goodness for Savannah and the people who love the theater and the arts, because we got some great volunteers to help finish things off. And we were able to open that at the beginning of our last season, this past fall. Yeah, and it made a big difference.
Yeah, it is pretty great, because we did have some population come out that were insecure about coming in the way it used to be, I guess.
Right.
So it was a great thing to have for that.
Yeah.
Speaking of Driving Miss Daisy, I had the privilege of working underneath your direction. What were your takeaways from that? Not me personally, but the whole production.
Well, you were lovely, Chris Bass, as Boolie. No, you were. The qualities that I saw in you in your audition, and that I knew from personal knowledge of you, were just right for the role. The big takeaways from a Southern classic like that is, first of all, it's rooted in truth. A lot of this play is based on a real family from Atlanta, and real situations that occurred during that period. The bombing of the synagogue, and things that actually happened. And we, as I read it again, and I've seen I don't know how many productions of Driving Miss Daisy, but it really struck me what a wonderfully structured play it was. I never thought about it from the dramaturgical standpoint, because I hadn't directed it before, and I've never acted in it, so I don't, I really don't know it from that perspective either. But as an audience member, I've seen it a few times, and so I think it really stands the test of time as a well-written piece. I'm also struck by the beauty of its simplicity. These three characters, their development over their knowledge of one another over 20 years. As you know, I opted for something that was simplicity itself in terms of the set decoration, furniture and props, and the use of the space in kind of its minimal form, so that the story itself could be the star. And the narrative that you guys were telling to the audience would really be highlighted. And it was. The exploration of character just was allowed to shine, and it moved me every single rehearsal. And you can say when you're directing something or you're in it, it's not that you're jaded, you've got work to do.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't want to be appreciative of how great it is, but you don't have the time always to sit back and take that in. And I found that as I was directing scene after scene with you guys, and then we'd put something together, I found myself laughing hard or weeping hard. And I just thought, oh my gosh, this really works on all these levels. And I was delighted to have, another takeaway is that I got to not only work with you, but Patricia Miller, who's a Tybee Island resident and a very accomplished professional actor in Actors Equity Association. Yeah. And she was a luminous Daisy, just luminous. If I could have designed an actor to play that role, I don't think I could have come up with anyone better than Patricia Miller. She was funny, she was poignant, she was acerbic, and beautiful. Just terrific. And as Hoke, who at times is her foil and at times is her dearest friend, again, I don't think I could have found a better Hoke than Patrick Robinson, also an Actors Equity member and a resident of Jacksonville, Florida. In fact, he was born and raised there, and he's done a lot of theater all over the place, but he resides in Jacksonville, and we were very fortunate that he was available and could come to Savannah to do it. And you, of course, are local. Patricia was local, so I think it was a perfect marriage of three characters with three actors. I really, really enjoyed it. What other takeaways? Well, Savannah loved it. And I was tickled by that because we sold like we've never sold before. And I think if we had planned to run it for a few more weeks, we wouldn't have had any problem getting audiences. And so maybe one day, who knows, maybe we'll bring it back at some point because that kind of a story is always, it's always appreciated, especially by its Southern sisters and brothers.
Yeah, I thought it was a sweet and a funny and an endearing story the whole time, and I loved being a part of it. So going back to our history, our first stage experience together was, of course, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner?
Ah, yes.
That was a crazy show. It was a great show. I have to say that I enjoyed my watered down coffee much more than I enjoyed my watered down sweet tea. This fake bourbon that we're carrying the whole time.
Yeah. Well, you have to remember that this was the 50-year anniversary of that movie. So that was part of the reason a lot of people had an interest in it. The play was not written for many, many, many years after the movie. And when we were doing it, the director at the time, Ken Haley, thought he would want to make this statement of a 50-year anniversary of an iconic movie that had some huge stars in it. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. And Sidney Poitier. I mean, I don't know how you get any bigger than those three. But, it was, I think, important to tell that story again, to show how far we've come and how much we've evolved and how much we've developed with the idea of looking at race as not something that's frightening. When two people love each other, we don't see color, and yet the message is that we must see color. We must see it. We must embrace it. We must accept it. And this is not something that, I think even today, of course, we've got, uprisings and riots and a lot of political and racial issues to get through that are heartbreaking. And I don't mean to equate a play that is essentially a comedy with drama in it to anything that's going on today. I certainly wouldn't do that. But the story, as it was told a few years ago when we did it, had its moments of poignancy that I think are resonate every bit a couple of years ago as they did in 1968.
Well, I should say that even if it isn't on the level of what we're going through now, it's certainly a reminder of the struggles that we've had to get through to where we are now. Even though that, there's just so much darkness right now that it would be hard to equate it for sure.
I think it also shows the struggles that we have in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
While progress may have been made, it's quite obvious that we've got a long way to go as a nation, as a society, as a culture.
Absolutely.
And we can't assume that we've accomplished much if people are still hurting as much as they are. So it's important to hear these voices. It's important to do plays that talk about, that have social themes, racial themes, and political themes. And that's part of what live theater does as well. And live theater does maybe better than, entertainment in general, not just the live stage, but the entertainment industry, I think, is always holding a mirror up to people and saying, look at this, with the success of a movie like BlacKkKlansman, which is a real story. We have to hold this mirror up and let people know that these issues have not been swept under the rug, that we're going to keep talking about them, we're going to keep doing them. And I think Savannah Rep, if I may boast a little bit about it, has had a very proud record of diversity, even in its few years that it's been open. We've had 3 very successful seasons, which aren't a lot. It's certainly something to build on, and we're very proud of it. But even in those few years, the diverse casting and hiring of all kinds of people, local and guest artists as well, has been laudable. And again, we've got more work to do, as every piece of entertainment has. So that's kind of exciting too, as we look for new pieces to put into our future seasons, and we look at casting, we look at writers, we look at we want to work with young playwrights as well, and maybe do some experimental stuff that is ancillary to the main stage productions. We're talking about a lot of things. There's a lot of very, very exciting ideas that are going on at the Rep that will engage and reach out to not just the city of Savannah, but all of its neighborhoods, all of its citizens. I'm very excited to be part of this team.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And speaking of the team and Savannah Rep, when did you first become a part of the team?
I was hired as an actor not quite 4 years ago to play Lady Bracknell in The Importance of Being Earnest. It was the inaugural production for the Savannah Repertory Theatre. And it was in a rented space downtown. I can't remember the name of the space now. It was a gallery. I just wish I could remember it.
Well, Jennifer's watching. Maybe she could tell us. Come on, Jennifer.
Who's watching?
Jennifer. Jen.
Oh, yeah. Jennifer, our company manager, our managing director
of
Savannah Rep, Jennifer Bishop. She'll have to tell you what the name of the space was. But it was a really nice production. It was beautifully designed, beautifully built. The costumes were superb. It happened to be done by someone else that Jennifer knows, Tanya Bishop.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, my gowns were just out of this world.
There you go. Ryan answered.
Space. Oh, it was just called Space. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. No wonder I couldn't remember it. What was that space called anyway? I just can't think of what the space was called anyway. It was a really wonderful production, and unfortunately, it wasn't attended by very many people because who knew what Savannah Repertory Theatre was? Most of us who were working in the show didn't know what it was. So, it was a brand new outfit, a brand new organization, and that was a really, really nice production. And then the following seasons were created with musicals, plays, dramas, comedies, everything from two-handers to, full-blown musicals and holiday events, family theater, you name it. We've tried to really be inclusive, as I said before, and invite everybody in from Savannah. There have been some plays that have had schools involved where, the kids can have an opportunity as part of their school day, the school matinee kind of thing. And so we're looking to expand into more of that as we build our future. So yeah, very, very exciting.
Yeah. I know that schools are always looking for that kind of thing. So that's a great thing to go into. Yeah. Let me ask you this. How did you get your start?
Oh, how did any actor get his or her start?
I can tell you how I got mine, but I want to hear yours.
Probably the same way that many did. And that was cutting up and showing off in school. And finally the school music director and or the high school theater director, pulled me to one side and said, you ought to be doing our plays and our musicals. And so of course I did. I also was one of those young people who was involved in the many community theaters in the area I grew up in. I grew up in central New York in the Syracuse area, and it has a thriving cultural community, as many small cities do, small-ish cities. And so I did community theater as well. And then I went to university, and I remember my high school guidance counselor saying, well, you're going to be a music teacher, because I was, a pretty solid musician and pretty solid singer. And said, you're going to go to a music school and become a music teacher. And I said, no, I'm going to be an actor. And I remember the guidance counselor saying, what? And next thing I know, I was studying acting.
Yeah. What are you, crazy?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Some days I ask myself that. And I graduated with a BFA in drama and speech at the time. It was called at Ithaca College. There was no music theater department, although we did musicals. And, those of us who sang or danced or played instruments and what have you were encouraged to also study at the music school. Ithaca is quite famous for its music conservatory. And so they incorporated those of us who were musicians into the musicals. And I also did plays and comedies there. And then I went and studied in Europe, and I got a Master's of Arts in German theater in translation. And I met and worked with a lot of really famous people, and I probably didn't appreciate them at the time because I was so young. But I did some good work there as well. And then I came back to the United States, and I was looking to see if maybe I could work in regional theater. I didn't know if I wanted to go to New York right away. And I ended up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And I got yet another master's degree. And this was a Master's of Fine Arts in performance. And I ended up, after that, working for the Playmakers Repertory Theatre. And that was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And it was there that I met my husband. And after that, we moved to New York, and I sort of never looked back until I had children. And I, when I was a young actor in New York, I did, theater, film, television, a lot of commercials, a ton of voiceovers, all those things, industrials, all the things that actors do. I was in 3 unions. Actors Equity was my parent union, and the Screen Actors Guild, as well as the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. So yeah, there are lots of organizations for professional actors to join. And SAG and AFTRA have since merged, so they're one union now. But there was a lot of interesting work to do. I was pretty happy with it, and then I had a couple of kids.
As one does.
Yeah, as one does sometimes. They come along sometimes, and so then I moved upstate. I did regional theater as well, but I didn't do the traveling. I didn't go out of town as I had before. I kind of stayed pretty close to home. I did some local commercials, local radio spots, local theater, a lot of local theater. And so then eventually the children went off to college, and we said, hey, we're thinking about going back to New York. We moved back into the city, and I've been here ever since. So, and still doing regional theater. So there you are. I mean, I can't get away from it. You know, I'm in, you know, Savannah in the last couple of years. So that's been great.
A life of performing.
Yeah.
I should hope that many are blessed with that, but few are chosen.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think the performing arts chooses you in some way. You know, there's a level of, dare I say this, insecurity that those of us who have to stand up and show off a little bit have. But the real pleasure of it, I think, once you get past all of that, is with really good training and good discipline. Somehow that feeling about just sort of standing up in front of people becomes something else. It becomes a creative process, and there's nothing like it, in my opinion. And I've enjoyed it as a director. I've directed, not as much as I've acted over the years, but I did study directing, and I did some directing over the years here and there. And I'm happy to be doing it again at Savannah Rep, in addition to the acting. Again, it's that focusing, it's that discipline that takes you into something that creates a moment, creates character, creates situation, and creates a story that is like nothing else. And, you know, I'm not sure I could live without it.
Yeah.
I know. I'm an addict. I'm a theater addict.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. I know. We all have this.
Yeah. Here's something I like to ask people. What bit of advice could you give someone who's just starting out and maybe struggling with that anxiety?
Well, I would say my answer is going to be several little elements, I think. The first thing I would say is see as much professional work as you can. I mean, if it's the live theater you're interested in, then go to live venues. See professional theater as much as possible. So you have a feeling about what it's like to really sit and look at something. Try and figure out what it is the company is trying to tell you. What was why did they choose this piece? Where's the story going? What are these characters trying to tell me? So you have a sense of the art itself as an audience member. Read whatever you can. Read dramatic literature. It's out there. It's all over the place. You know, look at how dialogue is constructed as opposed to reading a book where narrative is, is descriptive in and of itself. On stage, you don't have the advantage of telling the theater audience where you are. You just have to be where you are and let your dialogue and your character development inform them that way. The other thing I would do is talk to people who are in the business as much as you can, to the extent that you can meet anybody who's in the business. Find out what kind of professional organizations surround the work that you want to do. If you want to become a professional musician or a professional actor, or a director or a scenic designer, even a producer. There are all kinds of programs and organizations that support these professionals, and they're good to know about. They're good to find out about, and they have seminars. They have sometimes educational series to the public that are free, and you can learn a lot that way. And finally, I would say train. Get as much training as you can. Learn the discipline. Really focus on your instrument. If you want to be a singer, by all means, you have to take vocal lessons, and they have to be regular, and you have to adhere to them. Dancing is the same. Acting, the same. There can't be too much training that you do, even if it's just to have a class somewhere, to say, no, I've joined this tap class because I just have to, I've got to learn to tap. I have to be in that world. I have to be in those rhythms. And you might never become a tap dancer, but it'll inform something about your body that's important. Dialects, voice and speech. I had wonderful, wonderful vocal teachers over the many years that I've studied. And I still work with people on dialects when I need to, depending on the role I'm doing. I listen to things. I listen to tapes. I force myself to do certain things so that I don't lose whatever skill I might have had for that. And I've gotten work for being able to do lots of different kinds of dialects. So, it's come in handy. And finally, find out, get as much experience as you can in places where it's okay to fail. Join a community theater perhaps, or form a little acting company and experiment with some stuff. Get some one-act plays and, find somebody who'd like to help direct you. Maybe you have a local community theater. If you're very young, if you're in high school, join your drama club. A lot of them have them. Mm-hmm. So, there are many pieces to scratching this itch that people have, the need to perform. But the best feeling is when you feel that you are presenting something that's really polished, that's disciplined, that has gone through a process that makes you proud and makes you feel as though you are one with, that it's an organic gift performance that you're giving to the audience. That's the way I feel about acting. That's the way I always feel about acting, is that I'm giving something to the people who are watching. It in some ways makes it easier, because then I can get out of myself and just concentrate on the person I'm playing. It sometimes makes it a little easier. Because if you don't think of it as a gift to the audience, then you'll never let them in on it. And they have to be in on it if they're going to go with you.
That connection has to be there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially in live theater. Oh my gosh. My gosh, that's the, live theater is that essence between the who's on stage and who's watching the person on stage. That's magic. What happens in that gap that's where the magic happens. And you see people take out the hankies, or you see people laughing, and their playbills fall on the floor because they're laughing so hard everything falls off their lap. I mean, those are the fun things for me especially when I'm sitting in an audience. Yeah,
I think the hardest part. Well, it's not really the hardest part, but it's something you have to learn when you're on stage and you see that happening, and you have to just ignore it.
Sure.
Or let it inform your character, of course.
There's always a piece of you that keeps you safe and secure and grounded in the physical space. But there's that other piece of you that just lets it go because you're in a moment that you're committed to. Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, if we didn't know we were actors on stage, we'd be clinically insane, because otherwise, we really would believe that we're Lady Bracknell, but because we know we're not, then we can afford the time on stage where we can give ourselves over to that character while still knowing exactly where we're walking. We did that show, by the way, in 3/4 round, and Ken Haley, had us with different benches here and there, and little places where we could sit. There were some chairs upstage. There was a table, and just maneuvering those magnificent costumes was, you always had to think, oh my gosh, I've got a train behind me. Yeah. I have to kick it out from under me before I sit. I mean, all those technical things play into it, mm-hmm. but you still always are in the moment. You never lose sight of where you are and who you are and what the story is you're telling. It's a glorious thing.
Yes, it is.
So I hope that if any of your listeners are bitten by this bug, they get a cure for it.
Yeah.
But if not,
Yeah.
there are places where they can go to scratch the itch, as I say. So
Exactly.
And I wish them luck. I've been at it a very long time.
Well, it shows. I mean, it doesn't show that you've been at it a long, but the wisdom, of course. I think
Ask
all
my
that.
children. Ask
Yes,
my children how many shows they've seen me in. Oh my
Wow.
gosh, they still get a kick out of it. I'm sure when they were really young, really, really young, I'm not so sure. Probably thought, how come I can't swing my legs while I'm sitting in this chair? Right? But yeah. So it's a law in my family. If I'm on stage, you all have to be there. So
That's great.
yeah.
All right, Sandra. Well, this has been a wonderful, wonderful conversation with a dear, dear friend. And I so appreciate you coming on today.
It's been my pleasure, Chris. I so enjoy you. And, you're one of my dear, sweet peeps in Savannah. I don't know where we'd be without you. Certainly, Savannah Rep has used your talents many, many times. I hope that we get to see you on our stages again. I'd be delighted to direct you again if that opportunity came along for both of us. And please, all of you, look for your offerings from Savannah Rep, because we will be back.
Yes.
We will be back. The ghost light is on until then, and we want you to help us pave the way with these campaigns. And Chris, thank you again for having me. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Sandra. Have a wonderful day up there. And
you too.
Yes.
You too. Thanks.
Bye. Well, thank you, Sandra, for joining us today. And thank you for coming back again. Tomorrow on our show, I will have Chris Truesland, and we'll be talking about music, folk history of music, and PBS. So that should be interesting. Come back and join us.